In a distant village, somewhere deep in the dark forest, lived the Forester family. They were happy and lived peacefully until one day something evil came and changed their lives. Forever, it was a demon, vicious and powerful, that had been haunting the family for generations. One gloomy night, when the moon was covered with clouds, a demon appeared in front of the Forester house. He burst into their lives with such force that everyone in the village felt his ominous presence. The demon began to torment the family. He filled their house with his ominous screams and terrified everyone who decided to approach this place. The family tried to protect themselves from this evil, but the demon was too strong. He filled their dreams with doubt and fear, and during the day he pursued them with majestic, ruthless force. Each of the Foresters was dragged into his nightmarish world, where only agony and suffering awaited them. However, one of the sons of the family, named Jacob, decided to slay the demon. He went in search of a powerful artifact that, as legends said, could defeat evil spirits. Jacob walked through the abyss of the dark forest, facing obstacles and challenges, but he was full of determination and courage. Jacob soon discovered the location of the artifact, but in order to take it, he had to go through the spirit test that stood in front of him. Terrible evil spirits tried to keep him from the artifact, but Jacob did not give up. He overcame them one by one, despite their terrible powers. Finally, when he reached the artifact, he felt power and light inside him. In a joyous rush, he took it and headed back to his family, full of hope that this artifact would help them defeat the demon. However, when he returned home, he found that the demon had taken his family into the darkness of his world. Now Jacob has to decide whether to fight against an evil demon in his world or try to find another way out of this hopeless situation. Jacob felt despair engulf him in every cell of his body. He knew that without the artifact, his chances of defeating the demon would be slim. And now he had his last hope to use his new weapon in the fight against this evil. He plunged into his thoughts, trying to come up with a plan of action. Having put aside his worries, he suddenly heard someone whispering, "Jacob." A soft female voice whispered. He turned around and saw that she was approaching him from the shadows. She was the only one of his family who was still held hostage by the demon. She was covered in wounds and her eyes radiated despair and pain. "Jacob, save me," a plea sounded in his mind. Jacob was amazed. He knew she couldn't be real. It was a trick of the demon trying to confuse his mind. However, he couldn't give up. He had to save the family by using his artifact weapon and give them hope of salvation. Focusing again, Jacob finally worked out his plan. He was going to enter the demon world by embracing the light of the artifact and fight it right where this evil demon felt strong. The moment of truth came. Jacob closed his eyes, squeezed the artifact in his hands and inhaled with all his strength. The light blinded him, and he felt the world around him begin to spin, becoming more and more cloudy. When the light began to dissipate, Jacob found himself in another world. It was a place where darkness and light fought for dominance, and where vicious creatures growled and flashed their sharp teeth. But Jacob was not afraid. He was determined to reach the end. There, in the distance, he saw his family chained up and surrounded by demons. And in the center of everything stood the demon himself, his mighty darkness swallowing everything around. The hero prepared to fight this evil, and determined to look at the main figure in front of him. The demon, stretching out its mighty arms to Jacob's family, made ferocious screams and gloating threats. His eyes glittered with malice, and his shadow covered the entire battle. Jacob sensed the evil presence of the demon, but he didn't let his fear get the better of him. Now he had an artifact that he thought was the only way to destroy this evil demon and free his family. Jacob summoned all his courage and strength and charged. The artifact's radiance surrounded him with blessed light protection. But the demon was not so easily defeated. He shot lightning from his claws, but Jacob avoided it, protected by an artifact, and struck a light blow directly into the demon's heart. The demon's soul let out an ominous scream. Its darkness began to dissolve right before their eyes. However, the battle was not over yet. The demon, surrounded by an awe-inspiring fog of his own malice, rushed towards Jacob in a last desperate attack. Light and darkness merged in a cosmic duel in which the greatest forces were involved, and the fate of the universe hung in the balance. At the same time, Jacob achieved an insidious intent. He freed his family by protecting them from the demon's attacks, and they stood by his side ready to help. Together, they formed a shield of light that deflected the demon's attacks. Jacob used the artifact to enhance his power and filled his loved ones with faith in light and goodness. And at that moment, when it seemed that the demon had weakened, that his darkness began to dissolve in the light of the blessed artifact, that victory was already close, that all the sufferings that had survived were coming to an end, time stood still, and the one who seemed to be the loser broke out of the light captivity and filled with darkness, claiming supernatural power. And now Jacob and his family will have to face the most terrible ordeal they have ever experienced. In a deep valley, among green forests and picturesque glades, stood an ancient castle. The huge towers and walls covered with lichen gave the impression that the castle had grown out of the ground and become a part of nature. There was a mysterious atmosphere inside the castle, as if every stone and wall contained ancient secrets and riddles. The owner of the castle, Count Albert, was a mysterious and unpredictable man. He rarely left his chambers and communicated with outsiders. Residents of nearby villages told terrible stories about the Count, claiming that he possessed magic and communicated with dark forces. However, few of the villagers dared to approach the castle and find out the truth. One day, in the dark and gloomy night, a strange traveler came to the village. He was dressed in dark clothes and covered his face with a hood, with a deep secret look and a strange smile on his face. He walked through the village and headed towards Count Albert's castle. The villagers watched him with alarm and fear, but no one dared to stop him. As soon as the stranger approached the castle gates, they opened of their own accord, as if they were waiting for his arrival. He entered the courtyard, and the castle doors also opened before his arrival. The stranger's heavy footsteps rang through the corridors of the castle, and one by one torches lit up, illuminating his path. The stranger walked through the dark corridors of the castle, his heavy footsteps echoing in the empty halls. In one of the halls he met Count Albert himself. The Count was a tall and slender man with thick black hair and cold, piercing eyes. He looked at the stranger with surprise, but without any obvious threat. A brief conversation between the Count and the stranger ended with the Count nodding and pointing to the door leading to the upper floor of the castle. Without a word, the stranger climbed the stairs and disappeared into the darkness. Count Albert returned to his chambers, closing the door behind him. Meanwhile, in the village, rumors about the alien and his visit to the Count's castle filled up. The residents were afraid, but their curiosity was stronger. Several days passed, but no news came from the castle. People were worried and guessed that something sinister and mysterious was happening within the walls of the ancient castle. Meanwhile, the stranger was still inside the castle. His purpose was unknown to anyone. He spent his days in isolation, secluded in one of the towers, doing incomprehensible things. Only once a day did he go out on the roof, from where he could see the whole valley and the village below. He was standing there, looking into the distance, as if he was waiting for something or someone. And so, one gloomy evening, clouds began to gather round the castle. A gusty wind began to tear the old flags on the towers, as if foreshadowing the tense events that were to happen. The stranger remained on the roof, despite the deteriorating weather, as if something inside him dictated to stay there and wait. Meanwhile, in the village, strange and incomprehensible phenomena began. Residents noticed that strange sounds were coming from the castle at night, sparkling lights dancing in the castle windows, and some claimed to have seen shadows and ghosts coming out of the castle walls. Unexpected incidents caused fear and anxiety in people. The stranger spent several weeks in the castle, while the strange events in the village became more and more frightening. Finally, one night, flames suddenly broke out on top of one of the castle towers, and a mysterious silhouette loomed in front of the glowing windows. The villagers looked anxiously towards the castle, but no one dared to go there to find out what was going on. The next morning, a stranger appeared at the castle gate and asked about Count Albert. A few hours later, the Count left the castle, and there was a certain lull. The stranger, meanwhile, disappeared, leaving only a mysterious message for the villagers, in which he promised to unravel the secrets that hide in the castle. With relief, the villagers learned that the strange phenomena were over, and began to lead their usual way of life again. However, mysteries and riddles that remained unsolved continued to crumble in the dark corners of the castle. Count Albert remained unperturbed and silent. He did not make any statements regarding the events that had taken place, but his gaze now seemed even more gloomy and mysterious. The stranger never returned, and his story remained mysterious and inaccessible to the village. But since then, strange incidents have stopped happening in Count Albert's castle, and residents could sleep peacefully.